All right, everyone, welcome to the Lost and Found podcast. This is your host, Amanda. I'm so excited to have you here. We have a brand new guest episode for you coming in today, and I'm really excited for you to learn all about Randy Lyman. He is someone who has lived on both sides of success, the external and the internal. He is an entrepreneur, inventor, author of The Third Element. He has built multiple multi-million-dollar companies, earning patents and being featured in the Inc. 500. And he realized that his success without emotional awareness could often leave you still feeling empty. So in our conversation today, we're going to explore how emotions are not barriers to your performance, but rather they are the key to it. Randy's work has bridged science, spirituality, and leadership to help people understand how emotional intelligence is going to shape everything from your relationships to your business outcomes. So if you've ever wondered why achievement alone doesn't bring fulfillment, or, how to lead from a place of empathy, authenticity, and balance will help you, this episode is going to expand your understanding of what real success looks like and how that can change for you over time. So everybody, please help me welcome Randy to the show.
Hello, Amanda. Great to be here.
Yeah, so nice to have you here. I appreciate your flexibility. You've been amazing, and your team has been amazing, trying to reschedule everything all the time and make sure we can line up everything appropriately. So I appreciate that. And I always enjoy being able to talk to people that can understand the endeavors that it takes to run your own business and how things are going to shift and priorities might change sometimes. So you've been a blessing like that. So I'd love to dive in, as I mentioned in your intro, is about emotional intelligence. I often have talked on this show about taking pride in my own emotional intelligence and believing that that's a really good personality trait of my own and how I've cultivated that over time, and how I think one of the reasons I've gotten better at this podcast is because I've leaned into that emotional intelligence and I've been open about the really uncomfortable, raw feelings of being lost and unsure of myself and not really knowing where I'm going in my life. And so I would love it if you could share the very beginning of your journey and take us back to all those moments when you actually started to realize that something deeper was missing from your life. And when did you decide that you needed to pivot and make a change for yourself?
Well, in 1989, I started to become aware of just lack of fulfillment. I was successful, but I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't happy. And I met a woman in November of 1989. I ended up spending 3 years with. And Maria had been immersed in the world of spirituality and self-help and self-awareness for many years. And we were romantic partners for 3 years, and she was my mentor as well. And so she introduced me to the unseen side of the human experience. I was intelligent, I was working hard, but I was completely suppressing my emotions, was mostly unaware of my emotions. And so over time, I learned about my own shortcomings. I started to work through those. And I had a real big epiphany in about 1991, I think it was, where I worked through an emotional issue at a business communication retreat. And it was around my competence and something somebody had said to me about 12 years earlier that really hurt me in a way I was not even aware of. And so I was trying to prove myself competent to get my family's approval. And this old emotion finally manifested in the way of people around me being incompetent. Our emotions don't always show themselves in an exact one-to-one mirroring around us. But I had this issue of people around me at work and my personal life being incompetent, and I could not work through it with my mind and my actions alone. Well, I had this huge emotional release at this retreat. And when I went back to work 4 days later, the people around me who were incompetent either magically became competent or they left my life. And I had an epiphany as a scientist, as a physicist. I'm all about cause and effect. And I said, wow, I had this action, this cause, this release. And the effect was my external world changed. And that to me was really the turning point when I understood how our unprocessed emotional trauma manifests itself in our life, in our daily life around us.
Yeah, and that's really tough, I'm sure, because most young men I've met, especially in their 20s, are not willing to, one, go to a conference like that and be willing to be vulnerable enough to even figure out what's going on with them. And you said you went because somebody had mentioned your own competence to you, and then that kind of triggered you to go, or you already wanted to go?
Well, somebody did mention to me to go, but I had been having issues, which weren't really related directly to the reason I went to this, but with people around me being incompetent. And so what Maria always told me, and which I believe is true, is everything external is a mirror of the internal. She didn't have that clear of a connection like I eventually built over time of how our unhealed emotional trauma interacts with the law of attraction to create our reality, co-create our reality. And so it was always, if you go back to years ago, and so many hundreds of great coaches and teachers have said, watch your thoughts, watch your actions, because the world is a mirror. Well, very few of them have made the connection of our emotional trauma, which is bigger than time and space. The emotions are bigger than time and space. So if I have trauma from 2 years ago or 40 years ago, it's no different now than it was then. And if that energy is stored within my body, it wants to be released. And so it will mirror to me similar situations to the original wound and those real-time irritations today. If I don't make the connection of, hey, wait a minute, there's something to heal, I just try and change the outside world. And yeah, sometimes we need boundaries and sometimes we need to speak our mind about the outside world, but we really can't change the outside world. We can only change the inside world. And my work is all about how our unhealed trauma manifests in our daily life and how to get control of our life again, how to take charge, how to improve our life.
Yeah. So when you left that conference, is that what inspired you to write your book, or did this come later in life for the third element?
That came later. So the conference was, I think, 1990 or 91. It was a long time ago. But I realized, and since then, that people were missing the emotional component of being human, healing, and manifesting a great life. And also, I incorporated it into my management style and my businesses and my teams and all of that. And that made a huge positive difference in the success and profitability of my business, aside from personal fulfillment. So I started writing that book 4.5 years ago because I finally had the time, and I finally said, people need to know how they can improve their life. And it took me 4 years to write it because it was hard to take all these facts and put them into an interesting story in a manner that people would enjoy reading and could make sense of. And so I started writing this, like I say, about 4.5 years ago, and I'm happy with the way it turned out, but it was not easy. And it took me back through all my own learning again to a deeper level.
Yeah, I like that. I haven't had anyone on the show yet. I've had some people talk about, like the arrival fallacy and manifesting, and how to create affirmations or activations that are specific to you, that'll help get you closer to that other parallel universe. The future version of yourself does exist out there, but you have to kind of bridge the gap between your reality now and the reality that you want to create. But I haven't had anybody that actually has the physics knowledge that could explain how your emotions connect to science and how to apply that. So I'm curious, for people that may have not had the opportunity to read your book yet, you do go into that and you do explain it fairly well in a digestible way so that people aren't just going like, oh my God, and their eyes are rolling in the back of their head to go, I don't even know if I can understand how to read this. So would you mind talking a little bit about like the process that it took for you? You went to that conference, you had this emotional awakening, and you leave. What was going through your mind after that, and how did you start to bridge the gap between the science and the emotions for yourself?
After I had that understanding, I became aware that our old emotional wounds do create our current reality. Then I started thinking about it from a point of sympathetic resonance, which is a part of physics. So we're taught that opposites attract, which is in the electromagnetic field. That's true. But at a deeper level in science, at a nuclear and subnuclear level, resonance is what matters. Things that vibrate similarly are attracted to each other. And I realized that our emotional wounding that we hang on to, our emotions that we don't let flow through us and release, that energy that's stored in our body wants to be released. And so that energy resonates at a particular vibration. We can't measure it. We can't write an equation, but we can become aware of, wait a minute, I just got cut off in traffic. And if I'm really fortunate and I dig back deep and I can make the connection, maybe in the 8th grade, I was trying to speak and the teacher cut me off and I was embarrassed while I was sitting next to a girl I had a crush on. Okay, is that a big deal? No, not for my adult mind, but in the 8th grade, getting embarrassed, holy cow, that's trauma. And getting cut off in my speaking, getting cut off on traffic, is that a one-to-one relationship, or can I write an equation and say, oh yeah, this is exactly what it was? No. But the nice thing about emotional healing is We don't need to understand the original wound. We just need to feel the emotion that's starting to come up today. So if somebody cuts me off and I'm pissed off, okay, why am I angry? Because I feel I'm missing out on something, or I'm going to lose out on something, or I'm going to be late, or whatever that might be. And if I can dig into the feeling, I don't have to understand the original situation. I just need to release that old feeling. So when I became aware of this, then I started looking at everything in my direct connection. But I could always find a way over time as I built tools, and I share this in chapter 7 about 14 different ways to get in touch with the old emotions and work through them. As long as I could get to the feeling and feel the feeling completely and release it, then my external world changed. And so that's been my focus for 35 years is how do I become aware of the irritations, turn them into gifts, and work through that emotional energy that's behind the current day irritation.
Yeah, and for anybody that may have not tried these types of steps before, or they're new to building their self-awareness in general, what were the steps that you took that kind of gave you your initial aha moment or your initial realizing of, oh, I have a wound here? How did you get to that wound? Because sometimes they're buried way deep, and kind of like what you said, the jump is really far. I'm in traffic, but I'm angry because of something that happened in middle school or high school. That's a long, long time ago.
Especially for me, it's a long time ago. You're young.
Well, in general, like I have that a lot on the show. I'll be interviewing a guest, or they'll ask me a question or something, and I think I know what the answer is, but then like the internal, like the intuition will come up and it goes, no, the answer's this, and I'm like, I don't know why that's the answer, but here's the answer, and it's connected to whatever it is that happened in the past, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity here to talk to people that can register that in themselves, but also help me register those types of things too. So if you don't mind explaining, I think in your book, you call it the 7 steps or the 7 layers of questions to ask.
Yeah, that's one of them that's really effective. The first part is, am I willing to re-experience the emotional pain from the past? Am I willing to open Pandora's box? Now, Pandora's box has old emotional wounds, and it also has happy memories. It has more joy and love in today's world when we become aware of our emotions. But I can speak to my position as a man. It was difficult for me because of the pain that came through. Underneath my anger was loneliness and separation and disappointment. And it took time to get through all those layers. But when I opened that box of my emotions, then it was scary and it was messy. And I didn't understand at that point in time the value of becoming more emotionally clear, how it would improve my life in so many ways. And then the other thing is, as a man, well, what if I'm embarrassed because now I'm feeling emotion in a place where people might not respect me because of how I'm acting or feeling? Well, none of that was really valid, but those were the thoughts and worries I had. So as I worked through the emotional pain, starting with EFT tapping, it was a different form back then, but it's evolved into EFT tapping, and with breath work. And I worked with different breath work that was available in the 90s than what's available now, but any kind of breath work works. Journaling was really helpful for me because I'm a left brain list guy, and I'm still a left brain list person. I write down 3 columns. First of all, what is the challenge? What is the problem? Second, what is the solution, if I have it? And then even if I find the solution, what is the underlying feeling? And when I could take that logical approach, then my mind was willing to open myself up to the possibility of feeling old emotional pain, because the mind wants to avoid the pain. And I express this in the book. So again, as men, we avoid our feelings. As left brain thinkers, we avoid our feelings. And as people who don't want to feel the pain of the past, we avoid our feelings. So when we understand, and this is one reason I wrote the book, is to help people understand there's light at the end of the tunnel. Go down this tunnel. There'll be some pain along the way. It'll be messy along the way, but our life improves in so many ways when we're willing to face these old traumas.
Yeah, no, and that's really good that I feel like you learned that early on in life, that you could, start now. And I think one of the biggest things that's so important about self-development that sometimes people don't cover enough is that you can always start over. You can always work on it now. Like, just because the trauma happened when you were a kid, but now you're in your 50s or 60s, it doesn't mean you're like, oh, too late. Like, I'm just messed up. I can't fix it now. Can't get any better. And so it's actually like, no, it's not true, but you have to be willing to put in the work to do all these things, and it will be uncomfortable. And unpleasant, but getting to the other side is the real reward. I'm curious if you could share maybe some examples from your own life, like as you started to heal these emotional patterns that were shaping how you interacted with people, how you operated your businesses, how you built your relationships. As you started to heal yourself, what was that like? How did you start to change, or what changes did you notice in your businesses and in your relationships when you embraced this emotional vulnerability?
Less stress, less worry, better relationships, better health, great success in my business. But I'm going to jump ahead
Okay.
from when I had the awakenings in the early 90s to the late 1990s. In 1996, I sold all my businesses and started over. After 3 years of taking every penny I had and working up to 100 hours a week and putting everything into my new businesses, after 3 years, I was out of money and they weren't profitable. And I fell back into my old way of being,
Mm.
worried, frustrated, and not interacting with people in a way that was caring and compassionate. And my business stalled out. And one afternoon, 3 key people from my business came into my office and said, "We'd like to shut the door and have a talk with you." And they had an intervention. And they said, "You're not being the best you can be, Randy. You're showing up frustrated and even angry, and it's not helping the business. And we know you can do better." So I had to listen. It was difficult. Listen to what they had to say. And they said, "You go home and think about it and ask your wife." And I did. And she said, "Oh yeah, you're falling back in your old ways. You need to make some changes." So I had to look at myself. I had to look at my own frustrations. I had to look at my own fears. I had to dig back into my own emotional wounds. And it took a few days and to really realize what was going on. It took weeks to work through it all. And then I became more clear. My business improved. And this really set me on a path to figuring out how I could take what I knew at a deeper level and incorporate that into my businesses and the way I showed up, my behaviors, my practices, and then processes and programs for my business. So even though I took a step backwards, I became more clear. I figured out how to show up differently. I figured out how to integrate these concepts into my business, and then it took off. Holy cow. The next 4 years were incredible. That's when we made the Inc. 500 list in 2003. And so I had to kind of start over again and learn it all at a deeper level. And when I did, the success was incredible. Just being able to show up at work and see people working together and not have to micromanage, and to see people enjoying their work, and for me to enjoy my work at a deeper level. That was really the reward of that, taking a step back and applying what I knew again to myself and to my business.
I think that it's really great that you were able to tap into that and to receive what could have been a very confrontational conversation, to receive that input in a way that you go, all right, it's 3 people that I trust, 3 people that I know hopefully are people that would tell me the truth, right? To your face. And today's the day where they did it, but you received that information and go, okay, I need to do something with this, because if I keep going down the path I'm going down, I might lose everything, right? It might cost me a whole lot more than what I was willing to risk ever, right? So I'm curious if maybe you could dig a little bit deeper there and kind of tell us about maybe a time when choosing that emotional truth may have actually cost you something, but ultimately it gave you something much greater later.
Well, I'll go back to a situation that I had that was really a big impasse for me. And this was, I don't remember when it was in my business. I had a challenge with a major supplier.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to work through renegotiating an agreement for a supplier that was supplying 25% of the product we were selling. And they were being unreasonable. They were being stubborn. There were just a lot of problems. And I needed this product to keep my business afloat. And I felt backed into a corner. I felt like I was being held captive. And so I had to go back. Okay, what are the feelings? When could it have been, et cetera? Well, eventually I got to the emotion. It took weeks. First of all, I fought it with my mind and my actions for months. And then after I started to really dig into the emotions, it took me a couple of weeks, and it went back to a time in the 7th or 8th grade when I was being bullied. I was being chased through the hallway, and I was thrown into a locker, a regular hallway locker. And the locker never locked. Well, when they threw me in, they locked it. It locked. And here I was, I don't know, 11 or 12 or 13 years old, trapped inside this locker, and people are gathering in the hallway. So first of all, can I breathe? Second, I'm embarrassed. And how am I going to get the hell out of here? So I stayed calm. I did not allow my emotions to come through and affect me at that point in time. But those emotional wounds of being trapped were stuck in my being, stuck in my body, stuck in my energy field. So I worked my way back through to this point in time where I was able to feel the sheer terror of being locked in that locker. And I don't remember if I cried the tears or what I did to release the energy. But once I got through that terror and I re-experienced it, and that's a difficult thing to do, is to jump back into emotional pain, but I did. And then suddenly within like a day, this gridlock being captured, being held captive by my vendor, they became cooperative. They worked things out. And the problem went away. Well, I'd been working on that problem with my mind and my actions and my interactions for months. But as soon as I had the emotional release, then the outside world changed. And we ended up with a great contract and things were on time and better pricing and all that. It all worked out. And that was specific for me. I have other examples I talk about in the book, but that was one thing where people would say, well, that's just a coincidence. No, because I didn't go back and renegotiate. I didn't approach different. That vendor then just showed up different.
When you're saying that you worked through the emotional stuff, are you working through like a therapist that was doing that with you, or were you doing some of the tools that you talk about in your book, like to give you the emotional release about the locker situation, which triggered the emotional issues that were going on with your vendor, or at least they were all connected? When you had that moment were you like working with a therapist, or this was all personal internal work that you were doing, or was there like a specific tool that you used from your book that helped you in that moment?
That was personal internal work through journaling and through EFT tapping.
Okay.
I work today, and I still work today with a breathwork therapist, so to speak, or a facilitator. I work with a hypnotist who's very helpful for me. And I do this because they take me through a process that allows me to surrender to somebody I trust and work through the emotions. And still today, as an intelligent, successful 64-year-old man, sometimes I still cry the tears, and I'm not embarrassed about that. I'm human. And when I release that energy and my world gets better, it's worth it. I don't judge myself. And so it's interesting, if I happen to be emotional around other people, then they don't judge me because I don't judge myself. And as I talk about in the book, the law of attraction creates the world around us based on us. So if I have shame, if I'm embarrassed, if I'm uncomfortable, the people around me are going to be uncomfortable. And then I'm not able to release what I need to release. And my mind gets worried about the judgment and my relationships get all screwed up. But once I get to a place within myself that I've done enough personal work and released enough emotions, then there's no shame and there's no personal judgment. And then the world around me just doesn't care what I do because I'm comfortable with who I am and where I'm at. Now, it takes a while to get there, but the best way is start out in private and work with a great therapist who is willing to not just talk about it, but help us get into the pain. We have to walk through that pain again. We can't avoid it. We can't walk around it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I'm glad that you found people and other practitioners that can help you manage all of that and go through that and have a flexible schedule, because these things will come up at various times too. Especially, I'm sure as a business owner, you remember how busy your life was trying to do all these things and then sell your businesses too and roll that over into a new one and get things started and hiring employees. And it's a lot. It's a lot. It's changed over time, of course.
And what's important is, which I think I hear you implying, is we find someone who can help us, a support system, whether it's somebody who's on the path or been down that path, whether it's somebody who believes in us, believes in our potential, and will not stop us from growing, who's not uncomfortable with our personal growth. And along the way, we're going to lose family. We're going to lose friends. As we become more empowered within ourselves, then that makes some of the people around us uncomfortable. And we have to let those people go. And part of my challenge over the last few months is understanding that friends and family and such that I want to continue on my journey with me just aren't ready to continue. And that's painful and that's sad at times. But other people come and replace them, and we can love those people from a distance. We can love those people in person and just know that if they judge us, that's okay. That's their story. That's not our story.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you actually brought that up. That wasn't a question I had originally posed for you, but can you talk about that a little bit more, about the kind of the art of your own personal growth? You have to lean into that, but it's also an art of letting go of what's not meant for you anymore. And that can include romantic relationships, business relationships, etc., or just ventures that maybe you wanted to invest in, but now you realize it's not right for you, so you pivot and do something else. But sometimes we hold on to things because we want that to still be a part of us, but truly it's like that old identity of yourself you can't carry with you to the next phase. The healed version of you will not allow that duality to be there. So I'm wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit further if there was a specific person or relationship that you had that you did
Oh
have to
yeah.
let go of that really surprised you. Like, how did that process go for you? How did you realize letting go was actually the answer? Because I know some of my listeners struggle with that. They're either in relationships that they need to leave, or they're at a job that they hate and they want to find something else, but they're holding on to this thing. Because if I'm no longer a newscaster, or I'm no longer a journalist, or I'm no longer a stay-at-home mom, like who am I then if I let go of
Who
this
am
other
I?
stuff?
So in about 2005, 2006, I had to fire my best friend. I'd worked with them for, God, almost 10 years, I think, maybe a little longer. And they were going through changes in their life. They're about 30 years old, where they had to decide, are they going to take shortcuts, or are they going to just dig in and do what's right? It's what astrologers would call the Saturn cycle. It usually happens between about 28 and 30 years old. So this was absolutely my best friend, strong connection, supported me in so many ways. I did everything I could to support him and his family. And his ego got in the way and started having a negative effect on my business. So I sent him to counseling and like remote for a week. And then he came back and we did in-house sessions and such. And he could not let go of his approach, which was not healthy for the business. And it was really sad and difficult for me to let him go. And in doing that, better people replaced him and he found his own way. And I worked through my sadness around earlier family issues about having to let go of somebody who I really loved. But the business improved. And even though it was a difficult decision, it came back to what I always look at in any decision. Is it the right thing to do? Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's expensive in the short term, is it the right thing to do? And the other thing is, I've become very aware of what is my intuition and what is my emotion. And so because I'm so in tune with my intuition, I'm guided as to the right thing to do. And that takes time to learn. And I talk about that in the book as well. But our intuition shows up as a quiet voice, and it never argues for its position. It just speaks and says, turn left. And my brain will say, turn right, because it's faster, because of the traffic patterns or whatever. And my emotions might say, turn right or turn left because of these emotional reasons. But when we can tune into our true gut feel, intuition, whatever you want to call it, and when we can be aware of that, then that guides us in the right direction. So it was a difficult decision, but ultimately it was better for my business, and it was better for me personally to find areas that I'd been avoiding growth because I was leaning on this person who was helping me so much.
Yeah. And that's got to be really tough. My father and mother are both entrepreneurs in either marketing or coding. In your book, and in previous interviews, I heard you talk about you were, as an engineer and a physicist, you were also really interested in the coding process when computers were just starting and the internet was invented during your early business years. But they've started over constantly, and they've hired and fired various people throughout time. And I've watched how that's impacted them and how difficult those decisions are, especially if it's one that they've delayed over time. Like, it's just, we'll find a way, we'll ignore this, or it was just a bad day, or it's just this or just that. And it's kind of like when you start to realize, wow, this really is impacting the ripple effect. It's not just between the two of us as leaders in this business. It's happening now. It's going down the chain to the middle managers, which affects the employees, which affects the vendors, all the way through. And when you realize that's such a major decision and pivot you've got to make, it's really tough and hard to do, especially when you have a personal relationship with that.
And entrepreneurs are optimistic, and we're optimistic to the people we work with, and we become attached to some of the people we work with. They're great people and we love them. And if we're going to grow our business, we personally have to grow. We have to change. The business grows and changes. And if those team members don't grow and change with the business, then we're going to lose people we really love and care about, that we want to come along on our ongoing journey. But if they're not ready, we can't drag them along. When we release them, they find a situation that fits them better. We don't understand that until we've done that several times and we've observed that they're better off in a different place. But I had one woman who I really loved her. We worked together for many years, and she was not able to grow with the business. And I had to let her go. And she found a better situation where she was truly happier. And I still missed her. But she was happier and my business was healthier and I was happier. And so we can't drag people to growth that they're not ready for. And there's no
Yeah.
judgment. There's no expectation. It just is what it is. Everybody goes through life and their own personal journey at their own pace.
And it also sounds like you're saying like you can't not only can you not force personal growth on somebody else, they have to be willing to do that and for yourself, but you can't also force success to happen the way that you want it to happen, right? Like sometimes you do have to change the puzzle pieces and put things back together or start over like you said with you've done with your businesses, and it's very clear that you've achieved a lot of material success as well, but your current mission seems to have evolved into centering on helping other people find their own emotional peace and their own version of success. And so I'm curious if you could talk to us a little bit about, how has your identity of yourself changed over time, and how has that specific purpose of being more service oriented towards helping others, how has that redefined your identity?
Well, 40 years ago, for sure, and even 20 years ago, was about my success, feeling good about what I was accomplishing. Because as long as there is a wounded child inside of us who learned how to get approval from our family in one way or another, we're going to keep playing out those patterns. For me, it was and still is. Look at me, I'm competent. I fixed the transmission seal on my truck. I did this, I did that. And whenever I'm sharing that with somebody, I have to look at myself and say, okay, wait a minute. There's some part of me inside who still feels unacknowledged. And that's a big part of being human. So when we are looking at the people we work with, we got to realize they're human and they're doing the best they can. And a part of them still needs to be acknowledged, because at an instinctual level, if we don't belong to the tribe and we're pushed out into the wilderness or the desert or wherever it is, and we starve and die. Now, is that real today? No, that's not real. But humans over the last few hundred years, we've had it pretty well. But if you go back 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, if we were not part of a tribe, we didn't survive. And that's instinctual. And today, if my family doesn't approve of me and I'm 4 years old, then there's consequences. So we learn to fit in, we learn to be accepted, and we give up who we are in order to get that approval we need to survive. And then we get into high school, we still need approval to fit in. We get through college, we might need that. Well, now when I'm 30 years old or 35 or 40, I don't need other people's approval. I need to show up in a way that's clear and caring and compassionate. But if I have my own internal story, my own internal wounds about trying to look competent, then my baggage gets in the way of showing up for other people, because I'm still trying to show up for myself. I'm still not believing in myself. And this year in 2025, I went through a lot of personal growth about deservedness, because even though I know I'm deserving, when I own my businesses, I did hundreds of millions in sales over time. And those businesses have gone on to do well over $1 billion in sales. And I've served millions of customers. Intellectually, I get that. But that hurt inner child is like, am I really deserving? And I had to work through that this year with EFT tapping and breath work and a lot of different things. So when we work through our own baggage and get it out of the way, then we can show up for others, because we don't have that inner wound that we're trying to satisfy or heal or medicate and dampen. We can show up knowing that our true power lies within how well we serve the group, how well our team performs, and how much we all gain from our interactions. Now, business success is still part of that, but the business success comes from the people. The numbers don't drive the people drive the numbers. And my relationship with the people I lead drives the people that drive the numbers.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's some deep stuff there. And I appreciate you being so willing and open to share a lot about yourself and about these moments in your life where you've gone, that's the epiphany. That's where being so raw and being so open and being so emotionally aware actually improved my life and benefited me in the long run. Even if you couldn't see it exactly in that moment, you could see it later. Curious for anybody that might be listening right now who, there could be a man or a woman or they, them, whatever. But if they're listening right now and they're skeptical, they don't believe in astrology, they don't do the EFT tapping, they maybe haven't had a journal since they were a little kid, and they might not believe everything that, we're talking about right now with the emotional vibrations and energy sharing and how that can affect one another. If they're tuning out, what is something you could tell them right now that would make this work and the effort that you're talking about and the emotional healing stuff, what could we talk about now, or what tips could you give them right now to make this more accessible and practical for them? What's something that they could really apply?
Well, I'm going to say journaling because it's easy to write things down, but I'm going to also say, look at the reasons you don't believe. Look at the reasons you doubt yourself. Look at your disbelief, because for doubters, the doubts are easy. Let's get through the doubts first. Let's write down all the doubts first. Clear all that out of the way, and then say, okay, I'm going to suspend my doubts for a moment. And now I'm going to write down possibilities. I'm going to write down the good things I want. I'm going to write down the other side. But until our ego, our mind, which is a valid part of being human, looks at all the negative, looks at all the doubts, looks at all the problems, we can't be open to those positive aspects of our life that are ready to come in. And I can tell you, as a physicist, educated with honors, as a physicist and looking at the world this way for over 35 years, there's nothing more important than looking at our doubts and our pains and our fears and getting through those and acknowledging them and being brave enough to walk through those, because then the wonderful power of our mind comes through more clear and the effectiveness of our actions come through more clear. So look at the doubts and then put them aside and give yourself the permission to experience some wonderful things in life.
I love that. That's really good advice. But for anybody that has not had the opportunity yet to read your book, The Third Element, The Missing Key to Activating the Law of Attraction, what would be, if they could only read one chapter out of your book to understand how to activate the law of attraction for their own life, which chapter should they read? And can you tell us a bit about those key points from that chapter?
Jump right to chapter 7, because in chapter 7, I talk about tangible ways that people can address their emotional challenges easily, without pain and without drama, and things that makes logical sense that they can start incorporating today. So jump right ahead to chapter 6 is really good too, but chapter 7 has tools. Chapter 6 has some good explanations. And you don't always have to read a book front to back. Jump in wherever it feels right. Trust your intuition and open the pages and see what's there.
Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah, you don't have to read it front to back. I've never thought about that. I've read all the self-development stuff that's behind me, normal, left to right, but you're exactly right. It doesn't really matter. Nobody's watching me read the book, so that makes sense. This show is called the Lost and Found podcast, and so we often talk about feeling stuck and being in a moment in your life where you really don't know where to go next, and you don't really know, you're having trouble being okay, being in that lost moment because you kind of feel like this is never ending. When am I going to figure it out? When am I going to get to the next place or the next step or the next evolution of my life? And we really struggle with that. And you want to just hurry up and get it over with, but you can't always do that. So when you are thinking about helping someone who feels stuck either in their head or in their life, what would be the first step that you would offer to them or encourage them to do to get out of that kind of headspace?
Let go of the need for perfection and give yourself permission to make mistakes, permission for the process to be messy, permission to surrender to knowing it will work out in time. But perfection holds us back, and there is no clear path to healing. There's no clear path to improvement, and it is messy. So give yourself the permission to make mistakes.
Yeah, no, that's really good too. Yeah, being willing to try it all. And I've talked a lot about myself about failure and how have I defined failure throughout my life, and where did those definitions come from originally? Were they given to me like either subliminally or directly through an experience in my life, or did I come up with that definition of failure? And does it even matter anymore, right? Just because something didn't work out the way that I thought it was going to work out, or like going back to science, my hypothesis was wrong. Does it actually mean that that was bad, or did I just gain more data, right? And how do I improve my life based on this additional data? And so I always like to ask my guests, their interpretation of what does that actually look like? And if they have ever been stuck in a moment, what did they specifically do to get out of it? Because you always learn so much more by hearing other people's stories.
Surrender and ask for guidance. I still have my own goals. I still have my own desires.
Yeah.
But the path between where I am right now and my goal is never clear. It's never a straight path. And it's oftentimes not my path. So hold on to your dreams, hold on to your goals, and be willing to be open to other doorways and other windows and other opportunities opening along the way on your path to your goals. And if the goal turns out to be even better than you thought it could be open to accepting that as well.
Yeah. When you've had opportunities show up for you, or the door opens or the window opens or something like that pops up, how did you know that the certain door or the certain window was the right one to go through, or the right opportunity to say yes to versus no? Is that something you learned over time, or did it just kind of seem to work out as is?
As long as I am frustrated and insisting on a certain path, it's the wrong path. If I think of a path and it flows, and I stay with it. But a part of me still today says, no, I want this to work, and I'm going to try and force my way through. And I still do that. It's not the right path. I need to take a step back and say, okay, show me the way. I'm a big believer in
Yeah.
the unseen. I'm a big believer in spirit, and that the law of attraction loves us and wants to guide us to success. But we have to be willing to surrender to the steps along the way, and sometimes even the direction of the path, while still holding on to our goals. And intuition helps me a lot. That is a big part of it. And whenever I'm frustrated or angry or blaming, I know I'm taking the wrong path. I'm taking the wrong steps as soon as blame comes up.
I think that that's really, really important and very good for your own self-awareness to notice that that specifically is the main red flag, right? Where you're like, I am going down the wrong way right now. I need to turn around. I'm curious, we touched a little bit on your book. So you being an author, you being an entrepreneur, how these moments have affected your life. But I'm curious if you could maybe also talk about how these changes and these emotional growth moments that you've had and the leaning into the emotional vulnerability and fixing the emotional pain, how has that impacted your romantic partnerships as well? You mentioned you have a wife, and so I don't know how that may have impacted your marriage. Some of the listeners are married, some are not. So I'm wondering if you had any particular advice, either from your book or from your experience or from your coaching process, that you offer to people for their marriages as well, not just their businesses. How does the advice play into that?
Be aware that those who we know we can trust and those who trust us will bring up our biggest issues.
Okay.
So if somebody, a romantic partner, knows that we're not going to throw them out, then they're going to direct their biggest frustrations at us, because their inner child feels safe doing that. It's not because of who we are. It's not because of who they are as an intelligent adult. It's that pain needs to come out. And sometimes it comes out directed at us. Now, if it affects us and we respond emotionally, that's an opportunity for healing on our part. If we can be neutral, fantastic. But if we can't, then our gift is, what do I need to feel? And that's not always easy. It's not always easy to receive criticism, to receive frustration, to be in a situation when we're not receiving what we think we need to receive. And we can speak our mind, we can set boundaries and such. But if I have any frustration around the way somebody is interacting with me, especially my spouse, then it's an opportunity to look at me and to change myself, because I'm not going to change them.
Yes, very much so. You definitely can't change another person. They have to want to walk down that path themselves. And I hope for you, it sounds like you've found a loving partner who does support your growth and does support your ventures through this emotional journey, and the the emotional impact you're probably having and the effort you're putting towards helping others. It probably takes a lot of time and energy and investment on your own side, right? And so to find a partner that believes in you and believes in the work that you're doing, that's really important, because it'd be, I'm sure, would be so much harder for you to have a successful coaching opportunity or keynote speaking, schedule and things like that if you didn't have a partner that believed in what you were doing and believed in the impact that you can make.
And sometimes she's frustrated by the amount of time I put in. And I understand that and I appreciate that. And if it bothers me, it's my issue. And also sometimes when I'm frustrated because I'm having to put in a lot of time, because I don't have to work. I decided to come and do this and to put myself out there in the world to help others. And sometimes I get frustrated and she'll remind me, oh, you made this choice. Our personal relationship is an opportunity for irritations and support. And it's a balance of both. It's never just one. And we have to find within ourselves, where's the gift? Where's the gift? What can we celebrate together? And not only how can we hold ourselves accountable, but how can we really embody the positive steps we've made together through our challenges? And that's what relationships are all about. Yes, it's nice to have somebody who supports us all the time, but it's also helpful to have people who will point out our shortcomings.
Yeah, that hold up the mirror to you. Yeah, my parents, their anniversary it'll be the 35th anniversary coming up in May or 36, something like that. They've been together a very long time, long enough for me to not be able to do the math. And I've seen them grow, and they've never been perfect, right? They've had rough times, they've had really good times, they've had open conversations, they've had difficult conversations. And that's one thing I think, exactly like you said, that I've been able to appreciate, having parents that openly, one, support each other, but two, do share really difficult conversations together. And honestly, like, this frustrates me. I don't like it when you do this. Or like, okay, well, how do we come to a solution? And so I've been very grateful to have a relationship like that I can watch and mirror, hopefully for the better as time goes on. That's
And
wonderful.
And something that I teach in my corporate coaching is mediation. So when people can speak from first person, when you do this or when this happens, this is how I feel or this is how it affects me. Not blame, but saying this is my truth. Then people can hear our truth. And we have to learn to listen to other people and hear their truth as well without judgment. And that's what really helps a relationship and helps personal growth is what's my truth that I need to own and how can I speak up? And as you said, have those difficult conversations. And when we are able to do that, with the right people, it works. With the wrong people, it doesn't work. But with the right people, it absolutely works. And that's the only way we can have a healthy relationship is to be authentic.
Yeah. If somebody listening right now wanted to become a more effective listener or active listener, kind of like what you're talking about in your coaching opportunities, what are some things that they could practice to become a better listener?
Extreme listening, meaning when somebody talks, I'm not going to ping pong back and forth. I'm not going to be spending my time thinking about how to respond. I'm going to be present. Even if I forget my points that I want to make, I'm going to be present and listen to them. And when they finish, I'm either going to give a big pregnant pause and give them the opportunity to speak more, or I'm going to ask them more questions. And I'm going to let go of my need to respond intelligently, because that's not as important as them feeling like they've been heard, because they're never going to hear me until they know I've heard them, until they know I'm there for them. So I still do it. I try and, I've got this perfect comeback and I'm holding on to my comeback while they're talking and I'm not listening. And they sense that, they feel that, they know that. And when I can just shut up, and even after working on this for over 30 years, when I can just, it's hard, shut up and listen and truly care about what that person says, I don't even need to make my point. I don't even need to say what I had to say. And if it's important, I'm going to remember it. But the listening is still a challenge for me today because we're humans. We want to be heard, and that other person really needs to be heard.
Yeah, those are really good points, and I'm glad you brought that up. We are coming up to our last bit of the hour, so I would love to do some final core questions with you. These are things that I ask all of my guests, if you still have time.
I do. I'm here for you.
Excellent. Okay. So what do you want out of life, and have you found what you're looking for?
I want to get to the end of my life when I'm ready to die, whether it's in whenever it is. Hopefully it's a long time from now, 40 or 50 years. I want to look back and say, I did the best I could. I gave as much as I could give, and I experienced everything I was supposed to experience, because when life is over, even if there's reincarnation, which I believe there is, when this life is over for me in this body, I want to know I had the most fulfilling kind of wild experience I could have without holding back. I want to know I loved. I want to know I gave. I want to know I took risks. I want to know that it was worth it. And that's what I want from my life, is to make the most of this one opportunity that I have. And I want to help others be bold enough to take risks and be willing to make mistakes and believe in themselves and have a better life. So when they get to the end of their life, they look back and say, wow, I'm really happy with the path that I took.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you're right. It does take a lot of courage to kind of buck the system and go, you know what? I need to do what's going to make me happy, not what everybody else expects to make me happy or expects me to do. So that's amazing. And I don't know you, but I'm very proud of you for doing exactly what you're trying to do right now. I think that's really good. What would you say has been your greatest achievement?
To help the people I've worked with who have been willing to learn and grow, find their own power, to find their own strength, to find belief in themselves. And a lot of people have not wanted to go down that path, but many of the people I worked with over the years have been willing to say, okay, you're right, I can do better, and I'm going to look at myself, and I know you believe in me, and your belief in me, Randy, your belief in me is helping me find a way to believe in myself. And they show up more complete at work, and then more importantly, they show up more complete for their family and for their community. And when people can get past their doubt and see that strength they have within themselves, that changes the world. And we do that one person at a time by helping by believing in people and helping them find ways to believe in themselves. So to me, that's the most important thing that I've accomplished in my life, is to be able to help people figure out what they're capable of and believe in themselves.
I love that. So, how do you define purpose, and what does living in your purpose look like to you?
Purpose is, how do I grow personally, and how do I interact with others in a way that they can find their own power, to what I just said. But purpose means, am I willing to put aside the things I think I should do and that the world thinks I should do, and find what really serves my soul? How do I show up? Whether I'm learning a skill, or whether I'm learning to be a leader, whether I'm setting an example for others, or whether I'm just learning to accept myself. When we find that deeper purpose that helps us connect with a deeper part of ourselves, to me, that's purpose.
Okay, I love that. That's nice too. And I always like to ask, because everybody has a different opinion about that. So I love learning what other people's perspective is on that. It changes. All right. So if you could give yourself advice, let's go all the way back to young Randy. He's, in his Saturn, what'd you call it? A Saturn return moment?
The Saturn cycle, every
Saturn
about
cycle. If
20.
if you could go back and talk to Randy during his Saturn cycle, what advice would you give to him?
The same advice to give to other people. I don't have to do it perfect. I still want to do it perfect. I still think that inner child inside of me thinks if I show up and follow all the rules and I do everything perfect, I'm going to be happy. But it's messier than that. And yet it's pretty simple. Do what serves our soul, do what our intuition shows us is right, and don't judge yourself and don't judge others. That's what I really need to tell myself still.
Yeah, I like that. And that's a very sweet message too, and a compassionate message to give to your younger self. So that's really good. For anyone, either your loved ones, if you have kids or people that you respect, if they were to listen to this episode, what is the one message or lesson you would hope that they would take away from listening to your story today?
We are all spiritual beings on a human path. We all exist at a deeper level. And when we see that deeper level within ourselves and know that we are love and we are loved, and we see the deeper part of others around us, and we find a way to love them at their core, even if their surface is a little bit less than beautiful, and we start seeing the beauty in others, our life improves.
I love that. That's really good. And then finally, for anyone who's listening right now who might be feeling lost or stuck in their current situation, and they know that they need to make a change, but they don't know really how to start or where to start, what is the advice that you would give somebody that's feeling lost right now?
Look around at your friends and family, or anybody you know, who you feel, not you think they're finding success, but who you feel is grounded and calm and happy. And ask them questions. How'd you get to where you're at? And you start asking enough people who you see are truly in a place of peace, you're going to find someone who says, this is how I did it. And you're going to connect with them. And when we ask for a mentor, when we ask for a guide, when we ask for guidance, law of attraction responds and the right people show up in our life. So believe that right person or people will show up and they will be there for you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Randy. This has been such a wonderful time. And thank you again for taking time out of your day. I know you're a very busy man and I appreciate it so much. And you teaching us so many things today, and, keeping it relatable and fun and approachable. That seems to be one of the hardest things sometimes, is to even begin to have these conversations, because you don't know where to start, or you don't know which emotion to lean into first. So this has been really great. Please tell everyone how they can find you, or where they can buy your book or interact with any of your coaching offerings, things like that.
My website is the easiest way, randylyman.com. And there they can find access to my book and a new emotional healing workbook that I wrote for myself that we're sharing now, that people are loving.
Oh,
that
excellent.
is real easy to go through. It's a journal. You can write in it and take notes, and it's still helpful for me. And on the website, you're going to find offers and free stuff and references. And so go to the website, and then from there, Instagram primarily, but also Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever. I'm here because I want people to have the wonderful life that I've been able to experience. We're all here to find more peace, more happiness, more fulfillment. And that's my mission, is to help people find themselves.
Wonderful. And I will make sure to add all of Randy's information into the show notes and the description box of our podcast episode today. You know how to find me too. Let us know what you think about the episode. You can hit me up, hello@podcastforthelost.com. All of our social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok is all Podcast for the Lost. And we'll catch you again next week. And remember, wanderers are always welcome.